So, should Arsenal sign Kylian Mbappe? I know, you might be thinking, James, what a stupid question. Yes, get him. If possible, if you can do it, Arsenal must sign Kylian Mbappe. You might also be thinking it's ridiculous from the other perspective. You might be thinking, James, we're not getting him. What are you wasting your time for? There's no point. Arsenal not getting Kylian Mbappe. Well, it's news to me, but apparently Kylian Mbappe would be willing to join Arsenal. That's according to Miguel Delaney and The Independent, which is big news because go back a year or two ago, I never would have thought that we would be a part of this conversation, but here we are. Arsenal have done so well in recent years that we've got ourselves into a potential conversation around Kylian Mbappe, as have Liverpool, who've been there for a few years now. But let me just say that I think he ends up at Real Madrid. You know, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of trying to do this deal, but I do think he's going to end up at Real Madrid. But if that doesn't happen, it does feel like it keeps getting stalled. Is there an opportunity for Arsenal to pounce? And if there is an opportunity, should they do it? This all really comes down to wage structure. And there's a lot of things we are going to talk about in this video when it comes to trying to sign Kylian Mbappe and understanding whether it's worth it. But the wage structure can't be ignored. According to Football Manager, he's on £900,000 a week. Now, I did verify this amongst a few other sources, but that's kind of what they're saying. That's crazy to me. Let me know in the comments below if I've got that wrong, because when I looked it down, I looked at a yearly salary and divided it. I mean, it's looking like he is really on around £900,000 a week, which is extraordinary. That contract expires in 2024 as well. So whether they add a year extension, which I think has been talked about, you're either paying a big transfer fee and have to fulfill his wages, or you're getting him on a free transfer, but those wages are arguably going to be more. Like, you are not getting away from roughly paying him about £1 million a month, which is an extraordinary amount. That came to 20% of PSG's wage bill. So he's not a cheap asset. And why is he not a cheap asset? Because he's one of the best players to walk the planet. He is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. If you've watched football, as I knock my mic, you know Kylian Mbappe, right? You don't need me to sell Kylian Mbappe to you. But I'll try to with stats. Anyway, just in case you're not convinced, because at the age of 25, he's played 412 senior football matches. That includes games for Monaco, PSG and France. 311 goals, 142 assists. He's done it from 4 positions, from second striker to out wide and of course up front. He's got 17 trophies, 14 World Cup appearances, 12 World Cup goals, 2 World Cup final appearances and 4 World Cup final goals. He has done it on the big stage. He's got to a Champions League final as well. He's scored against the biggest and best clubs. There is no denying the talent, the world-class generational talent of Kylian Mbappe. And when you couple just how good he is and trying to make it make sense for Arsenal, if you're not sold on just how unbelievably brilliant he is, he actually works brilliantly tactically from Arsenal, certainly in terms of an attacking and positional setup. Arsenal play with a false 9. Gabriel Jesus is up front, but he moves everywhere. He's expected to drift wide, drop into midfield and get into lots of different positions. Kylian Mbappe would thrive, and yes, he would wear the number 14 shirt for Arsenal, but if we put him in that team, when you look at Kai Havertz, who seems to be Mikel Arteta's choice for that advanced left 8 position, if Mbappe is dropping deep and Havertz moves forward, there's a nice, balance there, I suppose. If he's, drifting out wide, so Martinelli can come central. He can have a little bit of freedom. He can either move slightly forward so that Zinchenko can overlap. You give Mbappe a lot of freedom to play in lots of different positions like you give Jesus, because A, he's unbelievable and you want to let him use his instinct to get into lots of different areas of the pitch, but also you've got the tactical setup to move around him as well and pick up the various positions that Mbappe will be playing in. He really is tactically perfect for Arsenal. But the thing is, that's kind of by the by, isn't it? I mean, really, the most important thing is you make it work for Mbappe. Even if you're not perfectly set up tactically for Mbappe, you do whatever you can to get Mbappe in that team and playing at his best. And that's how a lot of people will be feeling, because he is that good. But there are other things as well that kind of make the move make sense. I'm not 100% sure about this, but we'll go back to the Miguel Delaney article where he put in this quote that it's similar with Arsenal, who Mbappe would willingly join. That is in part a question of legacy too, since it appeals to the player to follow Thierry Henry. This appreciation for history and legends had been the sort of thinking that once guided his career plan. I'll be really honest, I think this is slightly overdone. Yes, they're both strikers. Yes, they're both French. Yes, they're both kind of explosive, profiles of forwards that can play up front, out on the wing. But I'm not really sure if that's going to be determining whether Mbappe is going to make the decision to join Arsenal. I think the real thing is that Arsenal have actually made themselves somewhat competitive from challenging for the title last year to being in a title race this year. Whether we continue, I don't know, but I think Arsenal have to get one of the big trophies over the line to really convince an Mbappe. I don't think just I want to follow in the footsteps of Thierry Henry is really going to be enough. So for all the great stuff I've said about Kylian Mbappe, there are reasons why he might not be worth it. Let's just start by addressing something that was said very early on when he signed his most recent PSG contract. It was about all the roles and responsibilities he'd have and all the power he'd have at PSG. That might feel like a reason to be put off by the player. That might feel like a reason not to bring him in because you wonder, well, how much control and power and say is he going to want to have in a club? But let's put that to bed right now. This report tells us that he's denied that when he signed his contract, he'd get the power to influence transfers, sack the club's manager, and pick a sporting director of his choice. He's denied that. I don't want to give that too much focus at all. One thing that does stand out to me, though, in terms of whether he is kind of a bigger... There's kind of more to think about outside than just sort of, how he does on the pitch and what he delivers on the pitch, is the fact that Real Madrid haven't been able to get this deal done. And when I kind of read and research kind of what is holding this up, I might be wrong, and tell me in the comments if I missed something. It feels to me like PSG aren't the stumbling block here. PSG aren't the problem. Yes, PSG are trying to keep him. Yes, they have offered him new deals, and yes, they wanted to persuade him to stay. But it's always felt like a deal was potentially doable, and him and his team have been very vocal, and one minute it looks like it's happening, one minute it says he's staying, next minute he says actually he's convinced to stay, and that has felt like a little bit of a headache for Real Madrid to navigate as well. That's maybe something to think about. But the real question, and it goes back to the title, it goes back to what I alluded to earlier in this video, the big question around whether he's worth it and asking why he might not be, is that sheer wage structure that Arsenal would have to break to get him in. Let me show you Arsenal's wages according to Football Manager. Now, if we work from the bottom upwards, we can see they've got 8 players on 50 grand to 100, 7 on 100 to 150, 2 on 150 to 199, and 6 players on that very lovely 200 to around 300 grand a week. But they don't have a single one above 300 grand a week. That's really important. That is really, really important. The reason I say that is because Arsenal aren't operating in the same stratosphere here. We are nowhere near what Mbappe is reportedly on, a near 900 grand a week. We are nowhere near those numbers. And so, if you're going to bring Mbappe in, you've got to consider that you're going to not only smash your wage structure, and let's talk like we can afford it. Let's assume Arsenal can do it. Obviously, if you can't, you don't do the deal. But if you can afford that, you're talking about him being on money that blows away some of our highest earners, whether it be our captain, whether it be some of our most promising young players. And does that alienate a few players? Does that create a little bit of a barrier? Because while he's earning all this money, he's got to buy into the club's ethos as well. It's all well and good saying you build around Kylian Mbappe, you let him do what you want to do. But Arsenal, and not just Arsenal, because Arsenal haven't won the major trophies. Let's talk about the ones that have. Liverpool and Man City. They've got there because everyone's ultimately bought into the same way of playing. One of the things that Arsenal have done really, really well is work incredibly hard off the ball. Their defensive numbers are superb. And Mbappe would have to be a part of that. A quick glance at FB Ref tells you his defensive numbers are poor. Whether you look at just his overview, which is really good, to sort of compare to his attacking numbers, which are extraordinary, and you just look at his defensive numbers more closely, they are poor. He isn't someone who's doing the hard graft off the ball, and Arsenal's players are having to. And so when he comes in, being paid all this money, are you also going to allow him to basically do what he wants and not have to buy into the overall way that the club are playing and the other players are playing? Or does he have to get in line with that? And maybe he will. Like maybe Mbappe would willingly do that. Maybe at PSG they've told him he can have the freedom to do what he wants, but he'd be more than happy to work incredibly hard off the ball and do his thing at Arsenal. But these are all things you would have to consider as well. The last thing to consider as well is that Mikel Arteta has been accused of not being able to handle big characters. Aubameyang has said it. There's been a little bit of a narrative, what with losing Mesut Ozil and the way that all happened, and Guendouzi sort of lashing out a little bit, and how Arteta, should I say, dealt with all that. Yeah, that is maybe a question, but again, what are we talking about when we say big characters? I think Arsenal have big characters, whether it be Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka. I think they're big characters. William Saliba, Gabriel, I think they're big characters. I think what we're saying is really high-profile players, and I don't think any come more high-profile than Kylian Mbappe, unless you're literally signing Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi. Of course, those aren't going to happen. So we're talking about an incredibly high-profile player. Can Arteta deal with that and everything that comes with it, whether it be stories in the press, whether it be Mbappe one day just maybe not, doing things the way the club want him to do? I don't know. But these are questions that we have to ask as well when trying to understand whether it's worth doing the deal. But like I said, for me, it comes massively down to the wage structure. So, on the one hand, to conclude, I feel like if it doesn't break the bank, you do it. Because you bring him in. You bring in a player who is arguably the best in the world, and whatever it takes, you get it done because he is that good. On the other hand, though, you might explain to the Arsenal players that he's not normal. He's a generational talent. And, yes, he's going to be on these wages and you are all well off it, but that's because he's Kylian Mbappe. But on the other hand, I can't help but think that a lot of clubs have been incredibly successful without Kylian Mbappe. Liverpool, Man City have won Champions Leagues without Kylian Mbappe. Liverpool have competed and gone toe-to-toe with Man City without Kylian Mbappe. They've had a Mo Salah, City have had an Erling Haaland and a Kevin De Bruyne. But still, does it have to be Mbappe, that real star quality that gets you over the line? I don't know, because at PSG, he's not been able to win the Champions League, but with France, he's been able to win the World Cup. So I really am torn. Let me know in the comment section below, see if you can make my mind up. I'm really torn on whether this is a deal Arsenal should do, if they could do it. For what it's worth, I don't think it's a deal they would do, because I think he's set for Real Madrid. But it's fun to explore, it's fun to ask the question. And it certainly springs some real headaches as well. And I just want to say a really big thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, actually hit the links right here to watch more content like this, including my Football First podcast, which drops every Monday to Friday at 6 AM. And I know it's annoying, I am really sorry to have to ask, but if you want to show support to the channel, hitting the like and subscribe buttons help promote the content much more than you could possibly know. Thanks again.